My YouTube analytics tell me that about 60% of the people who watch my videos, it's the very first video, maybe the only video they've ever watched. Another sizable proportion of my videos, they have people who have watched sometime in the last 5 months. They've watched more than once in the last 5 months. And then I have this really small percentage of people who have watched more than that in the last year. So a good portion of my viewers are brand new to the channel, and it dawned on me that you probably don't know anything about me, and that's what today's video is going to take care of. Now, I have a tendency when I'm doing these off-the-cuff kind of videos to wander a bit, chase some rabbits every once in a while, and so when I get done with whatever it is that comes out of my mouth, I will edit this video down where it's not excessively long. The short story of who I am is that I spent the last 23 years of my working life in education. I was a 7th and 8th grade English teacher for a few years. I was a technology coordinator for a district for a couple of years. And then I was the assistant principal at a STEM magnet school in Knoxville for about 6 years. And then an assistant principal at Fulton High School, more of an inner city kind of vibe, for 7 years before I retired. I retired June 2nd of 2023, and my first video on this channel uploaded on June 3rd. I had already planned for about a year to start this channel, and I really started off not knowing exactly where I was going, but thinking that if I put a channel out where I talk about everyday kinds of things and how things impact me and the kinds of things that I think about, whatever, it might be a good legacy for my kids and my grandkids. And if I don't get any subscribers, it's no big deal. I'll do this for a while anyway until I feel like I have exhausted all that I have to say. So I've been retired now for 2 years, and I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And because you are new to my channel, more than likely, I'll tell you, I live in an apartment in the basement of my mom's house. Now that usually gets some comments, and I'm ready for those. But my mom is 93 years old, and after my brother passed away, who used to live in this apartment, my mother was his primary caregiver for a number of years. And then he passed away, and I decided at some point after that I probably should move in here and just sort of be here. I don't take care of my mom. She still takes care of herself. I do drive her places, and I go grocery shopping for her and those kinds of things. And I pay a few bills with my credit card, which she allows me to do to get travel points. That's another video entirely. But for the most part, she lives alone upstairs. I live alone downstairs. We see each other 2 or 3 times a day, but we're not in each other's way. So I live here, and I'm in Chattanooga, and I love Chattanooga, and I do some videos from Chattanooga occasionally, and when I post them, nobody cares, but I post them anyway because I love making them. So that's the short version of who I am. The longer version of who I am, and I'll try to keep this a short long, if there is such a thing. I was born in Marion, Indiana in 1958, so I'm 67 years old. And we moved, while I was still just an infant, we moved to Rochelle, Illinois for a few years, which a lot of my mom and dad's family had migrated there from Arkansas. And then my dad started to get kind of transferred with his business or with his job. He worked for a wire company, worked for Belden Wire for a while, and then Essex Wire for a while. And he got transferred to Richmond, Indiana, and I was, I think, 5 when I moved there. and we lived right across the street from Charles Elementary School. So from kindergarten through sixth grade, I just walked out the front door, crossed the street, walked into the school door. That was my life. It was, basically prior to a lot of integration efforts. It was there was no, I didn't get bused. It was mostly neighborhood kind of schools. And in the seventh grade, I went to Test Junior High. I believe that was the name. And it was probably 5 blocks away from me, but it was in another world. And it was an integrated junior high. So that was the first time that I had gone to school with people that did not look like me. And it took me a while to adjust. I'm not going to lie about that. It took me a while to adjust. But after a bit, it just wasn't a big deal. But in the middle of the year, in December, my family moved. So I started at Test Junior High, and then we moved back to Marion, and I went to another junior high school for the remainder of seventh grade. And then they built a new junior high that I went to in the 8th grade. And then I went to another school in the 9th grade. And then we moved to Bennettsville, South Carolina, where I went to a private school in the 10th grade. And then we moved to Wynne, Arkansas for my dad to start a business and for them to move back closer to their family who were living there. And I spent 11th and 12th grade in that school. So I was kind of like an army brat in a way in the number of schools that I went to. But each one of those places, Richmond, Marion, Bennettsville, Wynne, they all taught me a little bit different things about living and about life. Now, I was always kind of a shy kid in a way. I don't know if shy was the right word. I've always considered myself to be an introvert. But in elementary school, I had several friends who lived right there in the neighborhood, just a few houses away from me. And we played a lot, but I was rarely ever the leader. I was always the follower. And when we moved in the middle of 7th grade, my whole life just kind of shut down. And I tell this story, I probably should make a video about the whole ordeal at some point, but I tell this story about, it's the first time I ever had to ride a bus to school was in January in Marion, Indiana, in the middle of winter, before the sun came up, with a foot of snow on the ground. And I had to walk almost a quarter of a mile to the end of the street to catch the bus. Now, it wasn't uphill both ways, but, you get where I'm coming from. And for the first couple of days, I stood on that side of the road and I saw the bus down the road from me, and it came and I got ready to get on, and it just drove right on past me. And I was just like standing there. Well, maybe it's too dark. Maybe they don't see me. I don't know. So I went back the next day. Same thing. Bus just went by me. Eventually, I don't know, after 2 or 3 days of that, the bus stopped. And I started to get on the bus, and the bus driver just held out her hand and said, "Hang on right there. This is not your bus. Your bus comes in another 5 minutes." And sure enough, my bus came down the road. I'd already walked back home before it ever showed up. And I've kind of described most of my life as being someone who stood on the side of the road watching the bus go by. I was sort of disconnected from it all. I wasn't really involved in my own living for years. So, to try to keep this story short, after graduating high school, I went to Lee College, which is now Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee, just up the road from where I live now. I went there for a couple of years, and then circumstances of life meant that I had to go back home for a while. So I went back and worked for my mom and dad for about 6 years. I was married, had a couple of kids by then. My dad passed away during that time. My mom sold the business. I got a little bit of money from that, and I took that money and went back to school. And so I finished at Lee University now, where I worked sometimes up to 3 part-time jobs just to put groceries on the table and use this money that I got from the sale of the business to pay for my college. And, circumstances were such that, when my goal was to become a Christian education director at a church. That's where I wanted to go. Education was where I wanted to go. Christian education in particularly was where I wanted to go. And that really never happened. I had a series of jobs, hit and miss kind of jobs. I wound up eventually, this was during the time in the video that I talked about recently where I was spending way more than I made. This was during that time. We had to sell the house. I moved to Florida. Our family moved to Florida. I worked there for a while. I was a part-time assistant pastor for a friend of mine. And I finally decided, if I'm going to do this full-time, I got to figure out a way to get full-time. And that's when I went into ministry to the military, and I became a civilian pastor for American servicemen families overseas. I spent 6 months in Scotland, 4.5 years in England, before coming back to the United States, where I was in the middle of a divorce by that time. I remarried, maybe too quickly, but I remarried. My second wife had a 10-year-old daughter, and I adopted that daughter, so I now have 3 daughters. I went back to school. I got my master's degree in secondary English, and then I got a master's degree in English K-12, which gave me a teaching certificate. And then I got a certificate in administration. And I spent a couple of years working on a PhD that I eventually had to just drop because of, again, life circumstances. I was already writing chapter 3 of my dissertation, and I just had to quit. And it was during this time that my second marriage started to sort of fall apart, and I wound up getting divorced again. And that's about the time that I decided that I was going to become a teacher, and I was going to get out of debt. I was 40, trying to put my life together. And so I did that. I paid off all my debt. It took a number of years to do that. And then after my brother passed away, my original plan was to move to Knoxville where I was working. But then my brother passed away and I moved over here. And so I commuted from Chattanooga to Knoxville for a number of years to go to work. It's an 1.5-hour drive one way on a good day. It had taken me as much as 2.5 hours to drive home on a bad day. But I did that for a number of years. And so, I have, like I said, I have 3 daughters. I have 5 grandkids. I live here in Chattanooga. I started this channel, and 30 days after I started the channel, I had 43 subscribers. They were mostly family and friends. YouTubers now will tell you, never tell your family and friends you've started a channel. Well, I didn't know that then, and I told everybody I knew. So I had a number of people that were friends of mine or family or whatever who were following the channel. And then on July 4th of 2023, I uploaded a video sitting on my old bed in my bedroom, talking about how I was finally getting rid of 35 years of stuff. And that video just went through the roof. And within the first 30 days, I had about 25 or 30,000 subscribers. The video was well over 100,000 views. The subscriber count kept going up and kept going up. The views are now about 1.1 million for that video. And even now, today, 2 years later, that video is consistently in the top 10 views of videos on my channel. Consistently. Right now, it's sitting at about number 7. So the 7th most watched video this month is one I made 2 years ago, and it really wasn't my best work. But that's another story entirely. So you get kind of an idea of who I am. I talk about retirement. I talk about minimalism because that was the lifestyle that I started approaching. I talk a little bit about decluttering because I went through that with all the stuff I'd accumulated through 2 marriages and several moves and whatever. I do talk about travel because that was the number one goal for me after retirement, was to be able to travel. I talk about traveling on points on my credit cards. We'll do another video about that soon. I talk about Chattanooga a little bit. I talk about the carnivore diet every once in a while. I'll do some cooking videos in I remodeled my kitchen just for YouTube to have a better view of what it is I'm cooking. All those kinds of things happen on this channel. And I understand that most people who subscribe because they saw a video. And then when they don't see another video like that video, they either unsubscribe or they just don't come back. So I have right now, I'm approaching 64,000 subscribers as I'm making this video. And my videos get anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 views a month, average. That's average. Maybe a little more than 3,000 on a good month. So 63,000 subscribers, 3,000 views. There's a lot of subscribers that don't come back. That's fine. On YouTube analytics, subscriber count really has nothing to do with how your channel's doing. I have a personal goal. Just throw this out there. I have a personal goal to get to 100,000 subscribers just because I personally want to put that plaque behind me on the wall. It's total narcissism on my part. And before I leave you, just let me throw this out there. In the description of every video is a link to an online store that I created with some new retired me merchandise, coffee cups and baseball caps and luggage tags and whatever. It's losing money hand over fist. I don't care. It's fun. And there's also a link to become a member of this channel for $1.99 a month, where you get 2 extra videos and 1 extra live stream every month. And that money does not go to me. That goes to fund the Aspiring Content Creator Grant that we do every year in June. So that's me in a nutshell. Let me know in the comments if you've got other questions or whatever else I can answer for you. I will be happy to respond. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a new viewer. And hopefully we'll see you in the next video.